So thank you for attending the talk, right? I know that all of you had, well, more than enough choice to go around. So thanks very much for choosing to sit in on this one. So my name is Kurt Muehmel. I work for Dataiku. My role, at least next year, currently it's a little something else, but let's not get into that. I'll be Vice President for Sales Engineering. I've been with Dataiku now for 4 years, nearly 4 years. Dataiku's been around for going on 6 years, so good part of that journey. And my talk today is about, well, it's titled, "It's Not Only Data Scientists Building the Enterprise AI Future!" Exclamation point, because we're excited to talk about these topics. So myself, I'm not a data scientist. In fact, I studied philosophy in college, among other things. And that's actually going to be important as we go through the talk. We're going to talk about defining our terms a little bit because we're introducing a number of different terms in here. Enterprise AI. Sounds interesting, but what in the world are we talking about? So, let's dig in. Enterprise AI. What in the world are we talking about? Well, if you're working for a larger company these days, somebody is probably talking about AI at some level in the company, right? It's just kind of the way of those. Now, if you're a data scientist, let's say a data science practitioner down in the trenches, you might be a little skeptical about this. And those of you in the crowd who know Dataiku a little bit, we weren't always talking about AI. There was a little bit of skepticism around that terminology because I think the challenge is, right, that it's been used a little bit vaguely, not always well defined when we're talking about AI. What exactly do we mean? And I think there has been a disservice done by a certain amount of marketing hype around the terminology, which, certainly rubbed us the wrong way. But the market is where it's at, and it's true that we are starting to see a future that we're calling enterprise AI. So, what would that future look like? What would it really mean to me, in an enterprise AI future? One way to define it, and what we're going to be using for the purposes of this talk, is a definition where you could see perhaps that there would be, let's say, 100% of business processes being augmented by AI, and 100% of employees benefiting from AI. So it's really about scale, right? That AI is now pervasive within the enterprise. That's how enterprise is modifying AI, at least how we're using that terminology. Feel free to disagree. We love the disagreements, and give us that feedback. But for the purposes of this talk, that's what we mean. And so what does this really mean, though? So let's go one level deeper. What this might mean then is that you end up in a situation where you might have millions of models. Literally millions of machine learning predictive models. How in the world do we get to that order of magnitude? Well, take a large Fortune 100, Fortune 500 company, and you start multiplying across, or adding up rather, all of the different business processes, machines on the shop floor, internal reporting initiatives, and so on. And it's not too hard to get to a number which is maybe 10,000 different business processes, which can be augmented by some machine learning models. Each one of those processes, you might be testing 10 different, or there might be 10 different models that you're ensembling together to contribute to different aspects of it. First, you have a little bit of image recognition, then you're doing some recommendations based on that, and so on. And then you multiply that by 10 again because you have 10 different versions of those models that are being in a challenger, champion type of structure, being pulled in and out of production, and so on. And so you go 10,000 times 10 times 10, you're at 1,000,000. Order of magnitude seems correct. And of course, you might end up with tens of thousands of people involved in something broadly defined as data science. Now, this is a key point. I'm not saying that the companies are going to have 10,000 data scientists. We're going to have 10,000 people, or tens of thousands of people, doing data science. And that's really going to be the crux of this talk. We're not going to talk so much around how do you manage 1,000,000 models in production. That's a different talk. We'll do that in a different setting. But in this talk, we're going to be talking about how in the world do you get tens of thousands of people contributing to data science. And so we see two approaches, or we have seen in the market two approaches being taken. And the way that we're describing those approaches are an inclusive approach versus an elite approach. And all right, so positive and negative connotations with this word. You know where I'm going to land, right? So no surprise there. But let's continue with this exercise of defining our terms, being very clear about what we're talking about. What would it look like if you were in an organization that was looking to follow an elite approach to this data science challenge? Well, probably what that would look like from the inside is you're gonna hire all the things, just hire it all. So rather than things, right, I should actually say hire all the people, and more specifically, hire a bunch of data scientists. And so that's not necessarily a bad thing. Your organizations need data scientists, and that's gonna be part of what we're talking about as well. But the challenge is, if it's all about hiring, if that's the entire strategy, it's just bring in a bunch of really smart people from outside, that's gonna be a limited view. That's gonna be a challenge. And specifically, it's probably evidence that the strategy which is being taken doesn't actually believe that the people that are there today have the ability to do that, and that by bringing in people from the outside, somehow that's going to help them achieve what they need to achieve. And so that's a little, we're going to get into that and present an alternative vision. Another symptom that you might be able to observe to see that there is in fact an elite approach being taken is that you might find new titles everywhere, right? So all of a sudden you have lead, senior, research, scientist, explorer, whatever. If you're lucky, you might end up with some Scrum Masters. So it's not that that's a problem. It's not that it's a problem to have all these new titles. Organizations do need to bring in additional capabilities, but you must not forget what is already there. And so if you see this happening within your organization, the recommendation is to watch out, be a little careful, right? It's good that the organization is thinking about those problems. That's actually a really positive sign. In fact, you're probably already in the top 50% of organizations that are taking these challenges seriously. Not every organization is thinking about that yet, but these might be early signs that your company is trying to take what we're describing as an elite approach. So what's wrong with that? Why not take an elite approach? Why not just go out and hire the best and the brightest from the top schools and get them in? Well, the challenge is enterprise AI requires an inclusive approach. So once again, enterprise AI, notion of lots and lots of scaling, getting lots and lots of people involved, doing lots and lots of machine learning, getting that deployed out, serving all the different processes and business functions that you need. That's going to require an inclusive approach. So that's a very strong statement that I'm making. I'm saying that it can't be done otherwise. Requires, that's a strong word. But we're making this claim based on what we've seen over the last 5 years that the company's been around. We're making this claim based on our discussions ongoing with practitioners, and ultimately what we've seen is that this elite approach, when we have seen it implemented or attempted to be implemented, it hasn't led to success because you end up with some experts who are isolated from the rest of the organization. So let's now consider the inclusive approach. What would that actually look like, right? So we talked a little bit about the elite approach, which again is not where I'm landing. We're talking now about the inclusive approach. What does that look like? So one way to think about it is that inclusiveness is all about bringing in the different practitioners, the different people to work together, right? So the different people that I'm tending to talk about are indeed data scientists, right? I'm not saying that you can do all this without data scientists. They are incredibly capable individuals who have really unique talents, which are beneficial. But we also we don't want to forget the analysts, right? The people who have been looking at the data for the last 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years sometimes, and who have a good sense of that data. We also don't want to forget the domain expert. So domain expert, very broad term, can mean different things in different contexts. But imagine, for example, that you're in a manufacturing company. A domain expert may be the technician on the shop floor who is actually working on the machines that are spitting off all of the data back into the historian, and that's getting persisted somewhere else and all that. But he's the guy who's actually on the floor and knows the machines. Alternatively, right, this could be somebody who is at kind of the pointy end of a marketing initiative. Person who's actually maybe on the phone. Maybe if you're working on let's say like an outbound calling initiative, right, where we want to make some recommendations and we're going to be picking up the phone and we're pushing that out into our call center. It's a person with the phone in their hand or with the headset on their head. These are the domain experts. These are the people who are out there actually touching reality. Well, those of us on the data side are somewhat removed from that by a few layers of silicon and a bunch of code and various interfaces before we get out anywhere and talk to people, better or worse. And then let's not forget our favorite people, managers, raise your hand. Who's a manager? Chris, put your hand up. Come on, man. All right. There we go. We've got some managers in the crowd, right? So managers obviously have a vital role to play as well, because they're the ones who are charged with making sure that things get done. They're the ones who are making sure that that the team is working together effectively, and that ultimately what's being done is useful, right? And so what we see is that all these different profiles, and you can probably add other ones that I haven't included. Again, we're talking about inclusive data science here, so feel free to add other titles in there if you want. So what are they working on? Well, first, all these different folks, they're working on defining the problem, right? And this is also often where, you know, the domain expert has a lot to say, right? That my problem is this. It's important, right, to get all of these people working on that problem definition to make sure then that the efforts of the data scientists, the data analyst, who might be working together, that they're actually addressing a real problem that has, has some use for the people down there in the trenches actually doing things. It also means, though, that all these people are working together and building the model. And this might be a data model, right? You know, take data from here, mix it here, do this, push it out to Tableau, and so on. This also might be a machine learning model as well. You know, take this, build up a model using this algorithm, train it on this data, so it can provide predictions of a certain quality, a certain level of frequency, etc. But ultimately, it's not all just about performing models. This is not, you know, scaled up Kaggle competition. What you're ultimately working on, right, is producing value. Value for the organization, value for the domain expert, value for everybody involved in this process, value for whatever it is for the that the organization needs. So let's get back to my strong statements. I keep making I'm telling you they're strong statements. Maybe you don't feel that they're strong statements. Again, you'll tell me later. But if we're saying that enterprise AI requires an inclusive approach, why is that? You know, so let's make the actual argument here. Well, so one reason, I think this one has actually been talked about quite a lot, you know, in the literature and the popular press for a long time. It's of course hiring, right? Hiring is hard. We're trying to hire data scientists. If anyone's a data scientist and they're looking for a job, come talk to us, right? We're hiring, right? And so that is a hard problem, right? But ultimately, I don't think it's the main problem. You know, an organization which is investing enough and, you know, putting enough effort into the hiring can do a good job hiring. That said, it's a constraint, it's resource intensive, and so on. So that's one topic. But again, I don't think that that's the main problem. The main problem is that ultimately, and this is a really strong statement, here it comes, inclusive data science is better data science. And if what you're looking to do is get to value, produce something which is going to be valuable for your organization. You know, produce not just 1 million models, because, ooh, that sounds like a fun challenge, but produce 1 million models that are actually valuable to the organization, that are augmenting 10,000 business processes in a way which is going to be driving value to that team. That's what we need to be focusing on. So that's kind of the main thesis of the entire talk, right? So now we need to dig into this a little bit, kind of open that up, and let's explore that idea. So, how is it that we can claim that this notion of inclusive data science is better data science? Well, first is the notion that data itself is extremely domain specific. And this can mean that two data sets that are presenting, you know, essentially the same, like analytic characteristics, same size, same number of columns, all of this, right? But different content actually within the data, could be of vastly different value depending on how recent they are, how they were collected, you know, what they actually reflect. And that's not necessarily going to be obvious just by profiling that data in let's say a traditional analytic means. What that requires, you know, domain specificity. You can't get that just by, you know, let's say studying a bit of Python or doing a boot camp, or even, you know, doing your PhD in data science, right? That's not where domain specificity comes from. Domain knowledge, domain expertise comes from often years of looking at that data day in and day out, which means within organizations, these are people who have been doing BI initiatives over the years, who have a sense for that data. Often what it means as well is that these are experts who have gone out and asked someone about the data. You know, somebody who actually knows something about where that data was collected, how it was collected, what frequency was it collected on, when was it updated, why are we using it? Actually getting out and talking to people, and I know, you can do it over Slack if you want, but actually getting out and talking to those people, that's where you get domain knowledge. And that's where you start understanding which data are really going to be valuable for the process that you have at hand. And ultimately, right, it comes from, actually being, if we go back to the example of, the technician on the shop floor, it actually means that having domain knowledge means that maybe you've spoken with that guy, and you've noticed that there's a spike in the time series data coming off of the machines that he's overseeing in the factory. In having spoken with him, that's a person who knows what that spike corresponds to in terms of what it sounds like, what it looks like. Are there weird vibrations coming off it? What it smells like, maybe. And the thing is overheating and it smells different because there's just, something's going wrong. And the same can be said then for, obviously other applications, non-industrial applications, whatever it may be. So the domain specificity of data means that we need to be bringing those people in. Those people who have that expertise need to be brought in as well. Now, you don't need to take my word for it. You can quote somebody no less than John Hennessy, who's currently the chairman of Alphabet, previously president of Stanford University, winner of a Turing Award. And so I was listening to this podcast. It was on the A16Z podcast. Strong recommendation. A lot of smart discussions there. And his quote is, "Machine learning is the ultimate garbage in, garbage out technology." That means you can build the most beautiful, sophisticated, high-performing, AUC, whatever model that can do absolutely nothing of use. And the risk is, you can think that it's useful, right? The risk is that you can think that it's actually doing something valuable, but you could be really wrong. And so maybe it's just, providing no value, which is bad. Worse yet, maybe it's harmful. Maybe it's hurting your business. Maybe it's hurting people. Maybe it's doing something that you don't want it to be doing, that doesn't reflect the values of your company. And so without having the domain knowledge to know that, you could be lost and you could be struggling. So one more reason then why inclusive data science is better data science. The problems themselves are interdisciplinary. And this is kind of flip side of that coin around domain specificity. But what this means is that looking at it from the problem angle, you can see that in order to identify the problem, address the problem, and start thinking about true solutions to the problem, you need people from different backgrounds. Again, don't take my word from it. No less than the New York Times has been writing about this. Actually, they did a section recently on AI, which is pretty interesting, and for a non-technical reader as well. And here, the title of the article was "MIT Plans College for Artificial Intelligence, backed by $1 billion." And so why in the world is MIT going and doing this, right? That's a big investment. And didn't they already have computer science courses? Didn't they already have, mathematics courses? Wasn't that already covered? Well, the challenge is, right, no, it wasn't enough to address this challenge of artificial intelligence. And to quote directly the president of MIT, it was to educate the bilinguals of the future. And I like this concept about bilinguals, right? Not only because I have some bilingual kids and all that, but I think that it actually is a really powerful explanation or description of what we're talking about here. And so now organizations, need these bilinguals. They need these bilinguals within them, but also they need to create, let's call them bilingual working spaces. Spaces where people who may not be bilinguals themselves, but can come together with people who speak different languages, to extend the metaphor, to work together. And what that means is we need to get people out of their silos. Now, we've been talking about data silos for about 5, 10, 15 years now. Let's talk about people silos and how you can start unsiloing your people, getting people from different backgrounds out of their different tool sets, out of their different backgrounds, and into a common place. And so ultimately, right, I've been presenting this image of inclusive data science, telling you how great it is, why it's better, all of that, right? But hey, Mr. Smarty Pants, if it's so good, why isn't it just the norm? How come everyone else hasn't picked up on this? And you might be asking yourself that, in which case, I don't appreciate the tone of the question, a little snarky. I would have appreciated a little bit more kindness in the phrasing. But it's a valid question, because ultimately, why aren't we there yet? And well, the truth is that this is a new organizational model that we're talking about. It's a new field. This kind of scaling up data science, artificial intelligence, all of that, that's not something that people have considered in the past. And so it's only natural, right, that the educational curricula have been designed for this different approach where people work among themselves and their specialties. The MIT program or college is a response to that. At the same time, right, technology has been separated. You had tools for data analysts, you had tools for data scientists. Nary the two shall meet, right? And so we're seeing those changes, we're seeing those changes in organization, in education, and the good news, and so I've been presenting a lot of challenges and strong statements and so on. The good news is that now the tools exist. And so now this is coming back over to Dataiku's core value proposition. Dataiku has been built and is designed to be one of those tools. What Dataiku does is allows all these different profiles, right? So you're finding, data engineer, data scientist, business analyst, analytics leader, bring in our domain experts to work together in a common platform, right? And so this is our one diagram to rule them all. And basically what this shows is that Dataiku provides that collaboration and governance foundation for all of these different profiles to access their data wherever it's stored, start doing the data management, data preparation work to get insights. Then when they're ready, move up to machine learning, start building out models, and then finally start deploying those models to really get to, let's call them AI-enabled services. Now, this is a platform which is fundamentally designed to span job boundaries, and as we're coming up with all these different titles, those job boundaries are getting mixed up. So you see here some screenshots of what the platform looks like, covering those different steps. And ultimately what you end up with is different users of different profiles. Here's our business analysts using certain parts of it, collaborating with their data science colleagues in different aspects of the platform. Ultimately then the data engineers coming in and making sure that all that makes sense. And of course the manager is keeping an oversight on all of that, right? And so what do we have to do with Tableau? So obviously we're a Tableau partner. And typically where we sit relative to Tableau is you got Tableau, and that's feeding out to what Debbie Reynolds from Pfizer said were the 20,000 Tableau users. Somewhere, right, there's all sorts of different data sources, and typically in between is Dataiku, right? And that's feeding into it, right? So connecting down into the data sources and then publishing out into Tableau for, let's call it, massive consumption. Now, we've been doing this for a little while. Brief history of Dataiku. Founded in 2013, right? Here we are in 2018. We grew up, product matured. We're very happy about all that. Tableau partner since let's say end of 2015, early 2016. And ultimately, though, what's most valuable for you to understand is what this actually looks like. So what does this actually look like? So let's go into the story time part of the discussion. And so ultimately, what we've seen is that some of our, let's say, most successful customers are those who have been using that full capability to engage in this inclusive model of data science. So we have one example, right? Fortune 500 customer rocketing towards enterprise AI. So there we are, rocketing now, going fast. One of the ways to quantify that is, they're getting up into the 700, 800 Dataiku user quantity. And who actually is that, right? And so ultimately, right in there's about 100 data scientists, which is great. Those guys are those men and women are working together, collaborating on their models and so on, doing more complex data work, delivering codes for their colleagues to reuse. About 20 data engineers, and about 10 managers, which is actually a pretty efficient pyramid that they've got going on. Not too many managers. But if you do the math, and you're all good at this math, right? We're only at about 130 people, and I told you about 800. So that, on top of that, is about 500 data analysts. And what they're doing is reusing, working together, doing ad hoc analyses themselves, not necessarily coding anything up themselves, but reusing that which had been developed by their colleagues. And so I wanted to present this picture to demonstrate that it's true. This is this is possible. We have seen it work so far, and ultimately this model of collaboration, where all of these people are working together in a single platform, has been delivering now about thousands of analyses, insights, and then models to optimize those business processes. So it's possible. It's a little bit ambitious, right? It's different. It's not been possible in the past. And so what now, right? Well, first, I think that the first and most important thing is to know that it is possible. Because once again, why isn't everybody doing it yet? Well, fundamentally, it's a new way of working. It's a new approach. And then second, right, is that we would recommend that you give it a try. How do you give it a try? Well, first you can go ahead and download it, give it a try, dataiku.com/try. You can stop by our booth, number 717, which is just right back there, just kind of right back there. You can come and, actually I didn't put it in here and Grant's gonna kill me, but my colleague Grant is giving a much more product-focused demo tomorrow at 10:45, I think in number 4, so you can go check that out tomorrow. And then also, most importantly, you're around New York, coming out to our favorite data science conference, EGG. That's the one that we organize, not just about us though. It's actually all about the this vision for collaborative data science at massive scale. And since we love Tableau, Tableau people, don't hesitate to use the discount code. So that's all that I've got for you. I used exactly 30 minutes. We just started about 6 minutes early. So it's kind of difficult to take questions, but feel free to come on up afterwards. Of course, come on over to the booth and love to be in touch. So thanks very much.